Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video, we're going to be going over some updates for the car market now that the sales month of April is almost over. Before we get in this video though, as always, if you're going to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. And then if you want to see more videos just like this, then I recommend you subscribe because I post content every single day. Let's get into it. So I want to start off by stating that once I have all of the sales data for April, then we'll obviously have a video going over what exactly happened. But the month is pretty much over, and so there are a lot of trends that I want to talk about in today's video that I have been noticing as I've been researching the market. The first trend is that there's less traffic to dealers right now. So there are fewer internet leads being submitted to dealers, there are fewer phone calls going into dealers, and there's fewer amounts of foot traffic as well. And so dealers are just seeing fewer customers from every single angle. And so what this is leading to is we are surely going to see a sales decline in April compared to March. Now that's pretty typical. That's what you usually see is March will usually see more car sales than April. March is a slightly longer month, and so that's kind of like a big benefit to it. And again, that's where a lot of people are getting their tax returns is in March. Obviously a lot happens in April as well, but you see most of that tax return buying in March. But again, it seems like things are definitely softening, especially towards the end of the month. What I've been hearing from a lot of dealers is that the beginning of the month was, slightly slower than normal, but it wasn't too bad. But, the tail end of the month, like really, really slow. And, I'm sure things will pick up these last few days because that's just what always happens. There's always people that go in at the very end of the month to get their end of the month deals. But there's definitely a slowdown. Now, the next big trend is that cars are just becoming harder and harder to sell. Dealers are having to do a lot more work to put together car deals, and on top of that, they're having to discount vehicles way more than what they've had to do over the course of the last couple of years, and it seems like it's continuing to escalate. There are a lot of vehicles right now that not only have big dealer discounts, but they also have manufacturer incentives on them, and they're still not selling. And so it's like dealers have to go that extra mile to get rid of the inventory. And we're also in a situation where, and again, it's going to depend brand by brand, product by product, but we're for the most part in a situation where like most dealers have inventory and they have like a lot of inventory. There are certain brands that have more inventory than what they had prior to the pandemic during certain times. And so it just shows that we're basically having this buildup to a, quote unquote, normal car market. But it looks like things could be overcorrecting in a sense because, again, it seems like things have kind of like stagnated in a sense with sales where the trucks keep coming in and dropping off more cars and not that many cars are leaving, right? The inventory just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and well, looks like the discounts are going to keep getting bigger alongside these larger inventories. And the buildup of inventories goes right alongside the fact that credit is continuing to tighten. What dealers are saying is that it's becoming harder and harder to get people approved for cars, and when they do get approvals, they're just not all that great. The interest rates just continue to increase as time goes on, and so even though the dealers are offering larger discounts on vehicles, because the interest rate increases, in most cases it doesn't really change the payment all that much for the customer. I mean, there are lots of circumstances where a customer might wait a month to purchase a car, and maybe there's an extra $500 or $1,000 off of the price of the car now that they've waited a month. But because the interest rates increased for that customer, their monthly payment's about the same. And you have to remember that with new cars, 85% of people that purchase a new car are going to finance it. And so that means that for 85% of buyers, the affordability is not necessarily getting better. And so it's just kind of this thing where it's going to push down car sales even more. Now, the next thing that should probably be obvious at this point is that dealer profits are continuing to decline as time goes on. It's not completely even though. So certain brands are definitely doing better than other brands. And then obviously on the service side of things, I've made videos about this, profits are still really strong. But when you look at sales on a per capita basis, for the most part, dealers are making less money off of warranties because there are fewer customers that are buying warranties, and they're having to discount the warranties more than they have had to over the last couple of years. And then same thing with vehicles. Again, I just stated this earlier. Dealers are having to discount vehicles more, and so this is leading to profits declining. The next market trend actually relates to advertising. Dealership advertising is really important because what's happening with dealership advertising really shows the overall health of the car market. So there are some dealers that choose to just never advertise, and these dealers are typically in what I would call like just small confined markets, right? So maybe it's like a small town dealer where they're the only dealer for like maybe 100 miles, right? And so there's no point in them advertising because they're probably not going to be able to pull people from other markets. And if people are in their market, they're going to know about that dealership because they're the only dealership in the area. So outside of those, case examples, when you go into dealers that are in markets where they have competitors, well, advertising is everything, because when you are in a market where there are multiple dealers, right, that all represent the same brand that you're trying to sell, then you're going to want to let people know that your dealership exists and that they should go to your dealership instead of your competitors. And so what you will typically see is as the car market increases in terms of day supply number of cars and then also just overall amount of inventory, dealerships will spend more on advertising because they have to spend more to bring the customers in. But that's not exactly what we're seeing right now. There are some dealers that are choosing to scale back on their advertising, whereas other dealers are choosing to scale up on their advertising. And this is definitely more on the anecdotal side of things, but what I can tell you is that it's having the effect that you think it would have, considering everything that's happening in this market. The dealers that are scaling back, they're spending less money on advertising, but they're also selling fewer cars. Because again, we're in a market where you have to work harder to get each customer. You have to spend more money to get each customer. And so the dealers that are choosing to not do this, well, they're just seeing fewer customers because the customers don't know that their dealership exists, and they don't know that their dealership is giving out, certain deals, right? And so the dealerships that are spending more money on advertising, they're getting more traffic and they're selling more cars. And so again, the fact that there is this even happening shows a huge shift in the car market. This shows that we are back in a car market where it is what I would call a buyer's market. It is not a seller's market anymore, because if it was a seller's market, then dealerships would not have to advertise. People would just show up to buy their cars because that's all that would be available. But now when you have pretty good availability with most product, the only reason why someone's going to go to one dealership over the other is because, well, first off, they heard about that dealership over the other. And secondly, the deal's better. And again, chances are the reason why they found out that the deal's better is because of advertising from that dealership. And on the topic of advertising, something that I do want to mention that I think just shows kind of like the overall health of the economy is the fact that advertising is starting to scale back. And I know this because I have a YouTube channel. I'm obviously having to always look into the advertising world to figure out things to keep the channel alive. And what I have noticed is that ad rates have actually continued to increase as time has gone on. Like, they've stayed pretty high. But the amount of ads being placed on platforms like YouTube has continued to scale back. And on top of that, like, direct sponsorships on YouTube and everything have also scaled back slightly. And again, I know this is just one case example, but when I go and talk to businesses and ask them about what they're doing when it comes to advertising, what they're saying is that when they have these conversations with companies like that they're going to advertise through, they're like, okay, we want this to be super targeted. We understand we have to pay more money per view because it's going to be more targeted, but that's what we're going to do. And so again, it kind of shows this shift in the overall market with the advertising side of things. Again, I need to make a dedicated video to it, but I find it fascinating that advertising is really expensive right now, but then there's just fewer parties that are choosing to advertise. But anyways, to pull everything together with today's video, things are definitely starting to contract with the car market. Now, I don't think that overall volume is going to fall. Again, I do think that there's going to be more cars sold in 2023 compared to 2022, but I definitely see that those more cars sold is going to be sold at a lower price point because dealers are having to discount vehicles more. Manufacturers are going to have to release more incentives. Again, I think this is going to be a positive feedback loop as the year progresses because the buyer base for vehicles, and more specifically new vehicles, is continuing to shrink as time goes on because the economy is not in a great situation. Interest rates aren't going down anytime soon. And so when you have like people getting laid off their jobs, which completely kicks them out of the car market, and you have these interest rates that keep going up, that means that the 85% of people that buy new cars have to spend more money on that new car because their payment's higher from a higher interest rate. It's just the perfect recipe for bigger discounts to be released to convince people to buy these cars. So I want you guys to let me know what you think is going to happen as this year progresses. But again, like I said earlier in the video, I think that the sales month of April is a pivot point in the car market, and it's a pivot point towards the direction of automakers and dealerships focusing on volume because of everything that's happening. Like, they just want to get rid of the inventory that they have now. And the only way to do that is through those discounts. I'll see you.